you for the nice introduction. My mother calls me Timothy when she's angry with me, so hopefully you can just call me Tim today. That would be fantastic. So I've been teaching presentation skills here in Korea for about 10 years now. And like Ali, I have a daughter here in Korean elementary school, 3rd grade. And of course, I've been attending her school events since Yuchiwan. And I remember a certain Yuchiwan Jiranjanchi where they asked 2 little cute, adorable children to come out and give the welcoming address. And they looked like this. And they came out and they had big eyes and they looked at the ceiling and they said, and it was just very, very, very robotic, and the kids did not want to be there, you could tell. And it broke my heart a little bit, I'll be honest with you. It was a little sad. And I thought, well, you know, they're just little babies. Come on, don't worry, it gets better. And then I saw my daughter giving a presentation in 2nd grade. And she learned to talk like this, and everything sounded like this. And I thought, oh my goodness, it's not better yet. And then I went to see some grown-ups make presentations, and it didn't sound much better than that. And so what I want to talk about today is I want to try to give you some ideas. I didn't realize it was soft CLIL until the last presentation, but apparently what I'm going to talk about today is soft CLIL in your classes, and I want to talk about ways that you can introduce some presentation skills into the classes, even when you're teaching them to do something in English. If they're in front of the room, they need to be trained. They need to be trained what to do, not just to feel more confident doing this in front of the class, but also you need to be more confident giving them assessment. So giving them feedback on what they're doing up there, and so that's what today's presentation is going to do. It's going to help you train them before they do it and assess them better after they do it. So they grow up and they come to university and they do an amazing job, and I don't have to reteach that. That would be fantastic. Okay? So let's get started. So I know that most of you have these in your books. Unless you're sitting over there and can't see very well, it might just be better to follow along, and you can use what's in your book for a reference later. So if you're going up and down from the book, it's hard to pay attention. So let's stay up here. Let's talk about the elements of a good presentation so that teachers can teach them better. All right, so students need feedback on more than just the content. Right? So when we're talking to the students about how they did, many times we're just talking about what we heard and not so much about what we saw. But again, the delivery style of the presentation is very important too, so we want to coach them about that. And also we want to give them suggestions for improvement, because those are more effective than just a score or a grade. I know we like scores and grades, but sometimes the feedback and encouragement can go a lot further towards giving them a good education to help them in the future. It's not just about scoring them, especially if we have not trained them in advance. That's not fair. So we want to make sure we train them and then we give them feedback on what we taught them. We shouldn't expect them to naturally be good speakers, and then especially in a second language. All right, so we're going to go through these A to Z style, because you guys are elementary school teachers, and I know you like to teach A to Z. So we'll go through and have presentation tips from A to Z. Very easy to remember. So we'll start with A. A is your audience. You are my audience. You're a fairly sizable audience. I don't know if you're a fairly diverse audience, but diverse audiences are the toughest audiences. So for example, I understand that many of you are elementary school teachers. Is that right? Can I get a hand up for elementary school teachers? What about middle or high school teachers? What about other? Oh my God, there's a lot of other. University? Sort of institute private teaching style? Okay, so we've got a very diverse audience, which makes my job slightly more, all these words, challenging. Slightly more challenging, but that's okay. I think this can be used at all levels. So when you put a child in front of the classroom, who is the audience? It's their classmates, right? So the good news is that they should see some friendly faces in the audience. The bad news is what they know many times the other students in the audience already know. And so they have to be careful about saying things that are fairly obvious. Do you know Seoul? Yeah, we live in Seoul. Oh, then that's not a very good topic. So they need to choose something that's not obvious to the other audience members. And of course, then when they're talking to the audience, they should consider, in this case, we have a lot of second language speakers, so I need to slow down and enunciate a little bit more than if I was talking to first language English speakers. So we have to consider our audience, and they need to plan according to their audience. So training them about that is the first step. Okay, have them consider who are you talking to. And so what I train people when they're talking at international conferences is you might be a second language speaker. Also consider, or is the audience second language speakers? No one's impressed by huge vocabulary. Right? Like, oh, he was so good, I couldn't understand anything. People don't usually say that. They don't say, wow, the words were so big, no clue. That's not a good thing. So we want to keep it and consider our audience. Let's go to B. B are busy slides. So busy slides are slides that have a lot of text. And the problem with slides that have a lot of text is that people naturally stop focusing here and start focusing there. And what happens is that while I'm talking about this, they're reading that, and the communication gets blocked. So again, these slides are very basic. They're pretty simple, so that you come back, you check it out, you come back, and you focus on what I'm talking about. And that keeps the communication from one channel instead of two. Okay? So again, the slide's job is to show, and my job is to tell. And so I want to make sure that I work together well with PowerPoint, and your students should do that also. Sometimes it's a beautiful picture, we show the beautiful picture. But we don't describe the beautiful picture. We don't have to, because we're showing it. Charts, graphs, data, that belongs in the show. We provide why and some answers about that. Let's go to C. C are clear signposts. So I came in from Daejeon today, because I live in Daejeon, and of course when you take the IC from Daejeon, you see the sign that says 144 kilometers to Seoul, 97 kilometers to Seoul, 65 kilometers to Seoul. And you think, oh, I'm getting there. Well, that's what a clear signpost in a presentation do. They say, okay, in my first section, in the second section, now I want to talk about, finally, everyone's favorite word, finally, I want to do this, and then everyone can feel that they need to reset their brains a little bit, and they can feel what maybe chapter they're in the presentation. And that helps as well. It helps them to know where they are in the presentation. So we want to break it up, but still maintain the flow of the content. Now, in class, your students probably aren't speaking for more than 1 or 2 minutes, but for longer presentations, we want to train them to be able to do that. Not so much for a 1 or 2 minute presentation. All right, so we have D. You can't fool me. I hear all the pages for me. So D is for delivery, and I know you're thinking we're going to deliver some pizzas today, but that's not what we're talking about. No. So delivery, we're talking about the visual and the sound of the speaker. So we want to avoid things like distracting hand movements for no reason. We want to avoid looking up or looking down all of the time. We want to make sure that we're making good eye contact with different parts of the audience. Your voice is clear and loud enough. Things like that are delivery. So when you make errors in delivery, that distracts the audience away from the content you're trying to present. So that's going to be a big section for evaluation and feedback. So when I work with adults, that is a huge part of it. And so we should start drawing attention to that at a younger age. Not saying you did it wrong, that's a terrible word to use, but next time maybe try more of chum chum chum. Okay. So you can see, you want to make sure you double check and triple check your slides, because if there are typing mistakes on your slides, you look really unprofessional. I hope you're reading my slide very carefully right now. Because if you are, You say, oh, Tim, you have a slide. And I say, no, I have 2 mistakes on my slide. Do you see the 2 mistakes on my slide? So one is a spelling mistake. Yes, one is a typo, but what's the other one? It's a grammatical error, that's right. So I fixed it. Don't worry, I fixed it. I was all over that. So I fixed it and I made sure to say, yes, surely our fingers slip and we ignore the red line and PowerPoint under it, but then we make your mistakes, and that does not look very professional either. So double check, triple check your slideshow. In my case, I would many times want to do a presentation in a low stakes environment, i.e. in front of my friends or coworkers, before I would do it in a more high stakes environment, like coming and talking to several hundred teachers. Right? I wouldn't want this to be the first time I tried this, because it would be incredibly embarrassing to have that typo there. Okay. So, friendly faces. So, friendly faces, I don't know about you, some people get nervous when they have to talk in front of a crowd. Anybody here get nervous? You can confess. So if I get nervous in front of an audience, I try to find a couple of smiley people in the front. Thank you. There's some money later, okay? So yeah, you want to find friendly faces, you want to talk to them. There's always going to be the sleepy people and the grumpy people who are having a bad day, and I understand, we all have bad days or don't sleep well, but I try to move past them pretty quickly and get to the next smiley person, and then, or I'll smile and they smile back, and I'm like, this is great. And then I find the grumpy and okay, don't. So friendly faces, and so I tell my daughter, I say, talk to your friend. Look at find a friend here and a friend there and go back and forth looking at your friends. And she said, I tried that, it was so much better. Because when I looked at them, they smiled at me because we're friends, and I smiled back, and suddenly I was a smiley presenter. And I said, yeah, it's like magic. So we also need goals. You can't win if you don't have a goal. It's hard to be successful if you don't have a goal. Take running, for example. If you start sprinting and then you find out it's a marathon, you're going to have a hard time. So you need to know, where's the finish line? What's the finish line? What do I want to accomplish with my presentation? And your kids should start thinking about that. Is it an informative presentation where I'm basically teaching? Is it a persuasive presentation where I'm trying to change the audience's behavior and have them start doing something or stop doing something? I don't think your kids are going to be doing sales presentations quite yet, so we'll stick with informative or persuasive, but they should start thinking about what do I want to accomplish? Do I want to tell them about 3 great restaurants in my neighborhood? Or do I want to persuade them to visit my mom's restaurant in my neighborhood? So I might approach those 2 goals slightly differently. But starting to think about that in an early age, as Ollie was saying, critical thinking skills, those things really can make a difference. Not maybe while they're in your classroom, but the next year and as they move to middle school or high school, those things start to build up. I often got frustrated when I was teaching at KAIST, and I would teach freshmen, and I would notice that, they didn't really say thank you until they were juniors. When they were juniors, then they track me down and go, oh, now I get it. Now I get what you were saying about time management and responsibility and how to give a good presentation, because I gave one last week and I was the best one in my class. And I said, high five. But when you teach them at that time, they roll their eyes, they say, oh, I don't need this. They don't know yet. Later, when they actually get in those situations, that's when they figure out, oh, that was really useful stuff I learned in 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade. All right, hooks. I always get a blank stare when I introduce hooks to even my adult students, and I give this hand signal. Hook is a way, think about fishing. A hook is a way to catch your audience's attention. So many times my students want to give a hook at the end. It's customary, I think, to at the end go, see How about that? And everyone's like, what? Sorry, I missed the last hour. What did you say? Was it anything important? If you give your hook, which is your benefit to the audience at the beginning, then they say, oh yes, I would like that, please, and they pay attention. Does anyone remember the hook that I attempted with you today? I'll give you a hint. The hook has the word you in it. So this presentation should help you do what? Be better at training and be better at assessing your students when they have to speak in front of your class. Right? I think the words help you are pretty hooking. If I came here and said, I want to talk about this today, so shut up and listen. That's not a good hook. But I've heard many speakers go, hi, today I'm going to talk about this. Let's start. And the audience is like, yeah, no thanks. And the cell phones come out. Come on, we know. The cell phones come out. We can get to the next level of our game. There's 3 messages waiting on Kakao Talk. I've got things to do. But with the hook, we say, okay, I'm going to give you my attention, which is a valuable thing. It's hard to do. So again, introductions. Now today I was lucky enough to have someone introduce me, but many times we have to introduce ourselves, and so an introduction generally is going to have 4 parts. The first one is the greeting. Hello, good morning. The second part is who I am and why I may be qualified to be here, i.e. I've been teaching presentation skills for 10 years. The next is my topic or title. I'm going to talk about building presentation skills, not just for students, but how teachers can teach them. And then the hook, why it's useful for you. And I put them together, and in about 30 seconds, everyone knows what the plan is. And everyone knows why the people on that side of the room should listen and what they get. Like, I hope, can't guarantee, but I hope you came here today like this. Give me something. Give me some useful stuff that I can take back to my class because I'm sacrificing my Saturday. Right? So you didn't say, Saturday, who cares about it? You said, this is my Saturday. So good. That's where a hook comes in. Like, it's a promise. Maybe I should hook like this because it's more of a yakso. I'm going to start thinking about that. So again, the introductions are the first impression, and they're very important for establishing this connection with the audience. All right, jokes. I would be surprised if your students started with a joke, but I've seen many adult presentations start with a joke. You know, be careful with jokes. If they bomb and you start off sort of in a bad, uncomfortable way, that's not a good way to start. And also, jokes, some people can be offended by jokes, so I would avoid jokes whenever possible. Now, to be joking, to be outgoing, to be enthusiastic, I'm all for that. I like edutaining. I think that's a wonderful thing, but let's maybe try to avoid the joke. So if your tip to the students, try with the joke. Maybe don't try with the joke. Maybe that's not the best idea. Okay, so professional mask. If you ever try to play poker, a card game, and you get some really good cards, you don't show the opponent that you got good cards, because you're betting, and you're betting against them, so you don't show them. Likewise, if I have a problem up here, I drop something on the floor, my computer has a problem, I don't want to show you that I have a problem. I keep a professional mask at all times. And similarly, if you're very stressed out or nervous at the beginning, I always got stressed out at the beginning class of every semester. Even though I had taught for 15 years, I would get really stressed out in the first class. You know why? Because it's like anything else. It's the unknown that scares us as speakers and people in front of you. It's the unknown. What if nobody shows up? What if they show up and they say, they challenge me and say, what do you know about that? What if they show up and they're all like, yeah, we don't really care about this. So you can imagine all sorts of terrible things, right? But the whole concept of things that could go wrong, worrying about what could go wrong, that's negative thinking. As opposed to, I have a wonderful gift to give, and I'm very excited to give it today. That's a very positive way to think. It's kind of like riding a roller coaster at Lotte World or Soul Land or a place like that. You see the people in line, and some of them are like, and some of them are like, but they both get on, and one of them goes, woo, and one of them goes, woo! And their hearts are racing, and they're both got their eyes, but one has chosen to enjoy it, and one has chosen not to enjoy it. And I think speaking in front of a group can be the same way. But no matter how nervous you are, and your palms are sweaty, and your heart is beating, if you keep a professional mask, then you don't show them if you make a mistake or you get lost. I had a trick where I would get lost in my class, and what am I doing next? And I would slowly have a thoughtful pause. And I would check what I was doing. And I would come back to the audience, and they had no idea. It was beautiful. Because if I go, and I show them that I'm lost, or I apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know when I was... I got lost. Why would you do that? So we don't want to announce. We want to keep a professional mask at all times. Okay, so L2 we should know is your second language. Your second language is English, many of you, and that can lead to communication breakdowns, especially when we're translating. If we make our first draft in Korean, look at my eyes. If you make the first draft in Korean and try to translate it, it doesn't work. You know why? Because your Korean level is amazing. And if you write it in your amazing Korean level and try to translate it to your slightly lower English level, you have translation problems. You can and should outline in Korean. Go for it. Plan, but when you start typing, sketch in Korean, but when you start typing, it should be typing things you're comfortable saying and working with. The language level, keep it simple. Don't try to impress people with words you don't know, grammar that's uncomfortable for you. As I said earlier, no one's impressed by words that they don't know. They want to understand what you're trying to communicate. So keep that in mind. Outline in Korean, prepare and type your materials in English. All right, managing your time. I had the good luck, wink wink, to be the speaker before lunch. And as I teach my students, there are 4 times you don't want to talk at a conference. The first one is the opening, generally 9 a.m. session. It's terrible. 9 a.m. is probably the worst because half of your audience comes in the middle of your presentation. And they're always like, excuse me, sorry. And of course you'll notice, if you look behind you, guys in the front, look behind you, see how much everyone's sitting on the edges, and then there's a lot of empty seats in the middle, and so someone's like, excuse me. So we see that also 9 a.m. If you say, oh, I'm a 9 a.m. speaker, that's bad. The second bad time is right now. Well, think about it. What's next? Yeah. So what's happening right here? Especially after my friend Ollie decided to talk about food for an hour. And now you get me, but you know lunch is coming next. And so your mind is already half lunch. But I know it. I know this by now. So I'm prepared. I'm prepared to just do my best, I can't help that. But then you guys are going to come back from lunch, and you're going to be digesting. And you've been chatting with your friends and having so much fun, and now you have to stop having fun and listen again and be quiet, and you're digesting. And then I guess maybe we can debate this, but then the worst time would be the last one of the day. Because everyone's like, I'm so close to the door. This is awesome. So really, I'm not sure there is a good time to speak, but thinking about your time, managing your time, I certainly don't want to talk into your lunchtime and steal your valuable lunchtime. That would be very bad. So managing your time is very important. I will check my watch and go, no problem. Okay. Now, N is for no one knows. No one knows what I'm going to talk about or what I'm going to add to this slide next. I could totally change my plan. And that's why I don't like writing scripts. Because when you write a script for your presentation, you feel bound to that script. You feel like I have to say what I plan to say. And that gives you no flexibility. Now you should be a kind of expert on the topic you're talking about. Even your kids should have chosen that topic because they know about that topic. I'm going to talk about my trip to this part of Korea because I went there with my family last week. Okay, then you maybe know more than some of the other kids. That's a good topic to choose. But when you have them talk about something they just read about, while that is a way to test how well they learned it, it's not really the best topic because it's not something that they feel comfortable with. So we should really reconsider that. But as far as no one knows what I'm going to say, and so giving myself the flexibility to change what I'm going to say helps me relax. If I want to change my plan with the professional mask, nobody knows. So O is for observe other presenters. So I was watching Ollie, and Ollie was very good. Did you guys notice? Like his presentation skills were very good. So he's the kind of person you want to watch and actually take some tips from. The way he engaged with the audience, the way he was always up with the audience, the familiarity he had with his content, he knew what he was doing. So he was a very good presenter. And so for someone like him, you'd want to watch and go, I like that, I would do that if I'm up here. Likewise, we sometimes see some presenters who struggle. That's the nicest thing I can say. They struggle. And so when they struggle, you can also learn as much or more from them in saying, they were not prepared to use a wireless microphone. They were not prepared if their PowerPoint started to start it back up again. They were not prepared to do this, that, or the other. So, you want to be aware and watch and learn from other presenters whenever possible. Okay, so pausing. I talked about a thoughtful pause earlier. Pausing's fine. You know why? Because I have the microphone. And I have a suit on today. And I'm way up here. Which means I have the power. And when you have the power, think about when you have to go to lunch with your principal, right? And your principal is late. Do you start eating? No. But if your principal is there and you're late, does your principal start eating? Yes. You know why? Because powerful people don't have to wait. You have to wait. I can pause. And when I want to start again, I will. Because I have the power. I have the suit on. Now, if I had a t-shirt and blue jeans and I said, hey guys, I came to Korea last week. T-shirt's fine. Then you say, you have no power, sir. Get out of here. But when you're up here, sometimes people feel like they need to voice the pauses. They need to say, good, the. You know, and it's very uncomfortable. And if you pause and go, again, no professional, ripped off professional mask, and you should, then that's not good. You pause, confidently or thoughtfully, and when you continue, you get right back to it. And you can teach your kids that too. Don't freak out when you have to pause. Pausing's fine. Q&A. My students hate Q&A. They're like, finished, thank you, and they run back to their seat, and I'm like, what if we have a question? No questions. But Q&A is scary, obviously, because it is the hardest thing to prepare for. Because someone might go, I have a question. And you're like, oh, this is not going to go well, because they have one of those questions that's like, you said this, but in my case, and you're like, oh, here we go. So Q&A, it can be scary, but again, I talked about demoing your presentation in a low stress or low stakes environment before doing it in a high stakes environment. You can get some sample questions at that time, help you prepare. I don't want to say you can plant some questions in the audience, but it's possible. Right? Right, buddy? Are you ready? We talked about it. Okay, anyway, so you can do that. But Q&A doesn't have to be scary. And also, if when you get questions that you don't know the answer to, what should you do? Should you say, oh no? I don't think so. What should you do if you get a question, maybe you don't have that data in front of you? Would you say, that's a dumb question? Or would you say, that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, I don't have that data in front of me, but I'll tell you what, send me an email, and I'll be happy to get the information to you when I get back to my office. It's professional. It's not lying. It's not making up some fake data. It's saying, I don't have that right now, but I want you to have it, and I will make sure that you have it. What if someone asks you a question that's a little bit too personal to them and the rest of the audience won't care? You say, that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, our audience is a bit not connected to that. Let's talk afterwards, outside in the hallway. I'd love to talk to you about that. Right? And so you take care of it. You say, I will, but I don't want to waste everyone's time. A little bit of nunchi. It's a little nunchi there. Okay, let's talk about reading. I have students, like again, they love to write scripts. The problem with writing a script is your script is beautiful. It's like your baby. It's so perfect. And so when you have a script, you want to read the script. It's like a magnet to your eyes. You made this beautiful, grammatically awesome, maybe checked script, and so how do you not look at it? And when you're looking at it, who are you not looking at? Your audience, the audience that you need to maintain the connection with. So reading comes from writing, whereas if you have each slide something to talk about, then you don't need to over-prepare, and you give your flexibility away. So again, reading cuts the connection with the audience. Smiling is great, because smiling shows, I'm not nervous. I'm happy to be here. And I was doing this with a magic trick earlier, maybe you didn't notice, that I would smile and you guys smiled back. It's funny. So you just keep a regular face and then you smile and they're like, oh. And everyone feels good. So keep that trick in your pocket. All right, takeaways. Takeaways come at the end. They work with your hook. And they remind the audience how they can use them in the future. So the content and the material that I gave you, you can use it for this. And again, like I said, it's connected to your hook. The promise you made earlier, the takeaways come at the end, and they are connected. Kind of like writing a 5-paragraph essay. give your introductory paragraph with your thesis statement, which is your promise of what's coming next. And your conclusion goes, hey, remember that? Yeah, see? So the takeaways should do the same thing, and you'll see my takeaways coming up. All right, the tech. We've got a lot of tech today. We've got this. We've got the computer that really wanted to update the Hangul software earlier. It really wanted to do that. We've got the microphone. I've got a mouse. We've got batteries. We are prepared. But you have to understand how everything works together. Did you notice, like if I wanted to come here and talk here, first of all, I might be blocking some people from the screen, so that's a bad idea. And my projector's here, so I can do that. But if you sort of get lost and you're talking and you're in the moment and you come here and you're like, and another really important thing I want to talk about, this is really important. Listen carefully. And why are you laughing? I don't understand. And that was the problem. You didn't understand the tech. And so always be aware of all the trouble. Like, I was so worried for Ollie when he tried to play the video. And at first it was like a little delayed. And I was like, please, gods of tech, don't do this to him. But yeah, video, oh, don't trust the tech. Always have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, or you will have a plan F. And so like I just said, videos, watch out. I went to a presentation in Daegu that the whole presentation was built around showing a YouTube video. And YouTube was having a bad day that day. And she couldn't show it. And so we were delayed. And she's like calling the people, like, I need a tech guy right now. And everyone's waiting and waiting. Then it was right before lunch. And it was right before. And she really wanted to show that video. And so it went way over into lunchtime. And people still talk about her to this day, and not in a good way. Don't be that person. Always have a backup plan. Okay, so again, watch the audience. You want to watch your audience, especially in a smaller audience, especially if it's like a high stakes thing. You want to watch them, and if they have a stinky face, you want to maybe say, oh, was there something that you wanted me to talk about more? You can just, if you see them leaning forward, and going, you might want to rephrase and change your vocabulary. So be prepared by watching the audience. Are they with you, or did you lose them, and how can you bring them back? So always, again, that's part of the eye contact and eye rotation, is to stay with your audience and make sure that we've got this going on. We've got a lot of this right now. This is fantastic. All right, don't skip slides. Anyway, no, sorry, what was that? When you get close to the end of your time, we have this thing like, don't worry about that. That's not important. Don't worry about it. If you made it, wasn't it important enough to make? Oh, don't worry about it. Wow. So take a second. Briefly say, I wanted to make this to show you this, then move on. But not, no, don't worry about it. No, don't worry about it. So, why is your nervous energy? This morning, she asked me about 8 times, are you okay? Do you need anything? You okay? I said, I'm fine. But still, you know, a little tingly, a little excited about coming up here. But when we have the adrenaline, Hulk. When we've got that, we have a couple choices. I've seen a lot of people, and they get a little breathless because they're so excited about being here. And that's when your nervous energy hurts you. But you can also use your nervous energy and make bigger gestures, and raise your volume, and have more energy. And then after about a minute or two, it starts to calm down, and you realize that the audience is not terrible. They're actually nice people. They're here to learn something. They're smiling back at you, and you calm down, and everything goes fine. But at the beginning, you stressed yourself out, but use that nervous energy to bring some enthusiasm to your presentation. Yeah. So again, I was talking to some of my students. I'm teaching local government officials about presentation skills these days in Jeonju. And of course, these are some 진짜 아저씨s. And so I said, you know, your big thing is to do a good 5-minute presentation. Like, oh, 5 minutes. I said, I'm going to go talk in Seoul for an hour on Saturday. Now, that's a lot more to ask for your attention for an hour just before lunchtime than it is for 5 minutes. But it's still easy in 5 minutes to get distracted. Our time, the amount of time that we can focus on something, thanks to smartphones, has gone down to about 11.6 seconds. And your kids in school are probably less than that. And so, when he said, kids like to listen. Remember from the last presentation? Kids like to listen. I thought, yeah, about 4 seconds. They do like to listen, but not very long. So again, your job is to keep the audience's attention. We do that with relevant content. We do that by having a hook at the beginning that explains the benefit to the audience. We do that by keeping the connection and the energy level high. And then promising to give them something at the end that ties it all together. Knock on wood. We're doing that today. Okay, so now you know presenting A to Z. Training your students to be strong presenters is something that you want to do as soft clill. That is really hard to say, soft clill. But again, remember, if you've got 20, 25, 30 kids in your class, one at a time coming to the front, that's 24 sitting there, right? So you train them to observe and notice good habits and bad habits about the presenting to make that time more useful. Not just testing them on, did you learn the content, but training them to observe good and bad habits. So you can say, what's one thing you liked about Sunmi's presentation? And if it's not content related, it's like she smiled. She looked at all of us. Well, that's a good thing. So building that awareness early on is something that they will take forward from your class. Don't be afraid to do that in your classes. Okay, so we'll talk about assessment. In my case, I use PDC, which is preparation, delivery, and content preparation. Good topic selection. Preparing enough content, but hopefully not too much content for the time they are given. In my case, I was given an hour. How are we doing? No problem. Preparation, understanding the technology, right? So I came in today, I said, is there going to be a break between the presenters? Yes, there was. So I come up, I make sure everything is the way I wanted. She even sent me a photo of how the layout was today. That's being prepared, so that I'm not surprised when things are a certain way. Then we talked about delivery in the D section, right? Delivery, bad delivery. My father, very smart man, PhD, education, terrible speller, very nice guy. He's a key jingler. He has his car keys in his pocket. And when he gets nervous, he jingles the keys. A jingle, 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 jingle. A jingle, jingle, jingle. And he doesn't know he's doing it. You can say, stop jingling keys. Like, what? Oh, have you met pin clickers? Are you a pin clicker? You see, that sounds like a little guilty. Like, I like holding a pen. I'm not holding a pen today because my safety teddy bear is my remote control. So I didn't need the pen today. I've got something in my hand. So today was remote control. It could have been a microphone. But when I'm naked in front of the class, I like to hold a pen. Do you guys have a safety teddy bear? Do you have something you hold? 20 years ago it was a stick. But you can't do that anymore. So yeah, if you want to have something in your hand, that's fine as long as it's not distracting to the audience. And I've had a lot of students, they say, well, if I'm, we'll call this the naked position. I'm not hiding behind this. So I'm out here, this is a whole different place. So when I'm out in front of the class, they said, what do I do with my hands? I don't know where to put my hand, because this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. What do I do with my hands? What do you do with your hands? Did you ever think about it? Are you a grasper? A grasper and a clasper? Are you a prayer? Are you a toyer? Do you toy with your fingers? Don't hide them. That's I don't know what's going on back there. And you're really suspicious if your hands are back there. I say, do you remember the story of Newton when he was under the apple tree? What, and the theory of gravity and all that? So I said, just let gravity do its job. Now, when we move, we want to move with a purpose, right? So if I wanted to say, as you can see, right, then my hand has a purpose for moving. And if I say, it's huge, it's tiny, this side of the room, this side of the room, well, my hands have a purpose. Other than that, relax. You can relax, or you can hold it and fly it around and do all sorts of stuff, because there's a reason to have something in your hand. Boom, boom, boom. But I like the theory of just move with a purpose. And if your nose itches, then scratch your nose. But your nose should not itch and itch and itch and itch and itch and itch, and your hair and your hair and your hair and your hair. That's distracting. Take a shower. Because it makes you wonder, why is their hair itching so much today? It's not good. And so content, again, content, we've got to think, what do I know? What do they need to know? What would be something useful and or interesting to the audience members? So when I was teaching a university presentation skills courses, we would do 3 to 4 minute presentations. 3 to 4 minutes, that's not a lot of time. So how much information, how much content can you give in 3 to 4 minutes? Well, generally the magic number is 3. It's kind of like writing, as I said, a 5-paragraph essay. You have the introduction, you've got maybe reason, 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 example, 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 and then you tie it together. So if I wanted to talk about 3 amazing places to have dinner near COEX, then you might say, well, I'm going to have dinner near COEX. That might be nice to know. And so I would say, well, here's option 1, and give you some information. Here's option 2, and give you some information. Here's option 3. I hope you have an amazing dinner tonight. And in about 3 minutes, I could do that. And here's something that maybe I know, which I don't, but if I did, I could explain that. You would say, yes, I do want to have a good dinner tonight. That would be very nice to know. Here's my hook. My content is relevant. And it fits the amount of time that I was given. Today we had 26 letters of the alphabet and an hour, so I had to measure it out a little bit differently. So, again, when you're assessing, when you're giving feedback to your students, you want to consider, were they prepared? What maybe could they have prepared better? And make a comment about that, maybe one-to-one or in written form for next time. Be aware. Always praise, too. Praise, praise, praise. Oh, you did that very well. Praise, praise, praise. And then for delivery, watch, I didn't feel like you were talking to us. I felt like you were talking to your note cards. So I would like it better if you tried to talk to us. Again, they should know their content. They chose something they know about. And so they should be prepared to deliver their content. PDC, prepared to deliver their content. So as the teacher who's asking your students to come up in front of the class, a very scary place to be, because you feel like you're being judged. But think about this. When you were a kid and you were there, were you rooting for them to do poorly? Were you saying, I hope they're boring? I hope they make a mistake? No. You were saying, I hope they don't bore me to death. I hope it's something interesting. So they're really cheering for you. And if you communicate that to your students, that the audience wants you to succeed, especially on a Saturday. The audience wants you to be successful. Why are you worried? Are you prepared to deliver your content? If so, things will go right. Okay? So final thoughts for today, before lunch. So again, we want to take some time and think about and brainstorm and decide if we agree about the classroom presentation goals. So what do we want the kids to accomplish during that time? Otherwise, it's just jumping through a hoop. Teacher, why am I doing this? Can you just do it? That's not motivating. That's like when I had to take calculus in university. And I said, why? Why am I studying calculus? What F of X and I? Why? Couldn't you just learn? I got a D. Because I never saw the reason of doing it. And without that motivation, I gave it about this much effort. And I got a very poor grade, and that's fine, because you know why? You know why that's fine? Because 25 years later, I have never had to use calculus. Winning! And I've had teachers come to me after these kinds of presentations, and they say, Tim, what do I do if a student looks me in the eye and says, my grandfather was a farmer, my father was a farmer, I'm going to be a farmer, why should I learn English? Is it the same as when I was forced to use calculus? Do you say, Kunyang, just do it? It's a very tricky question, and there may be a time when you have to say, you know, you're right, but I would like to give you the opportunity to learn it, because it could help you in the future. Nobody knows the future. So again, for classroom presentation goals, one of the biggest ones is time management, awareness of time. If you give them 2 minutes, try to teach them and prepare them to go for 2 minutes. Because you don't want them to learn early, oh, don't worry about that. If I give you 2 minutes and you talk for 3 minutes, no big deal. Well, that's 50% over your time. What if I went 50% over my time today? You'd have no lunch. So again, even just a little bit over proportionally can make a big difference. So we want to teach them about time management and awareness of time in the classroom presentations. So obviously we want to have them consider an appropriate topic with the content appropriate for them. We always want to ask, why me? Why you, the audience? Why am I competent to talk about this? Why is it useful or interesting for the audience? If it's not, why are you doing it? And that can be hard to do for a bunch of 4th graders in elementary school, but it's something we should still think about and ask them, okay, why did you choose this? Why do you think they would want to hear about that? And they say, I don't know. Well, then keep thinking. And this. Because many times, especially with scripts, it's very tempting to talk like this the entire time because they're trying to remember everything they're saying. And so it comes out a little bit robotically and they're not concentrating on their audience. And by speaking in this style, then it is something that they will do and then they finish. So do you remember my title today? Remember the title? Please stop building robots. If we can do that, and we can teach them to talk about something they're passionate about, bring that passion into their talk for the rest of their lives. That's something they can use. Maybe not calculus, but they can use this. Thank you.